Philosophers wrote, you see what Jews prayed and cried and dreamed about. They wrote that they're in treading water, running in place, waiting to come back to our land, to stop being in this unnatural state, to come back to our land, to sovereignty. And we prayed and we cried and we dreamed. And until we came back to our land, we weren't in a normal state. And I also have to make it so clear that Jewish identity, at least from my perspective, is not merely individual identity, it's collective identity. What I mean by that is the following. There are those who would say, my birth certificate says I'm 58 years old. I'm not. I'm over 3,000 years old. And medical science says that I'm going to die tomorrow for another 10, 20, 30 years, perhaps 40, but I'm not. I'm here forever. Because the Jewish people was born 3,000 years ago, and that's me. And the Jewish people are here to stay, and that's me. I remember what it was like to walk with Abraham in the land of Israel. I was there when the Jewish people left Egypt. In every generation, one must see himself as if he went out of Egypt. That's what we say on Passover, and it's true for every single event in Jewish history. We don't commemorate the past, we relive the past, we remember the past, and we pass on the memories of what it was like to be there, and all the events of Jewish history to our children and to our grandchildren and to future generations. And I say that it's all part of me. I'm a link in a chain. I'm more than a link in a chain. I am that chain. That chain extends from the past through the present to the future. And it's not just a horizontal chain. It's also a vertical chain, in that all the Jews alive today are part of me. Not just part of my family, but part of my sense of self. That's what I mean when I talk about collective identity. And I said that I'm not only a Jew. I describe myself as a Zionist. And when I say that I'm a Zionist, what I mean is the following. That I'm one of those Jews who has the deep, deep sense and conviction that at this point in human history, beginning in the 19th century, at the end, the time has come for the Jewish people to reconstitute ourselves as a nation in our land. The time has come to reconsummate our sense of self and our connection to our destiny in the ancient homeland. The time has come back. The time has come that all that yearning and all that praying and all that hoping and all that crying, all the reading of the prophetic visions from the Hebrew Bible that talk about the day that we will come back. A Zionist has a sense that that day has come. And God's word is true and is being fulfilled before our eyes, and it's being fulfilled. If it's being fulfilled, then I want to be there as part of its fulfillment. I want to make it happen. I want to experience, I want to feel it. I want to be where the greatest feature-length film of the Jewish people is being shown, and I want to be one of the major characters in it. That's my definition of a Zionist, for me. And then I say that I'm a settler. And I'm aware. I'm not so naive as to think that that word settler doesn't have political connotations. I'm aware. But from my perspective, to be a settler is not primarily a political notion. It's not a political statement. It's a religious statement. And what it means for me is that if I am a Jew, and I am, and if I'm a Zionist, and I am, then I want to fulfill my Judaism, my Zionism, not merely in the land of Israel, not merely in the land of Canaan, but I want to do it in the heartland of the biblical homeland. Look at the map. So you see there in green, dark green, that's Israel from 1948 till 1967. And then you see the red area. The map probably says, let's see, does it? Right, the map says it's the West Bank. You can also call it occupied territory. You can also call it liberated territory. You can call it Greater Israel, you can call it Palestine, you can call it Palestinian territory. I call it neither of those. I call it Judah and Samaria, Yehuda v'Shomron. And why do I call it that? I call it that because that's what my forefathers called it over 2,500 years ago. And that is the biblical heartland. I have news for you. Abraham didn't walk in Tel Aviv. And Isaac didn't visit Haifa. And Yaakov came pretty close, Jacob came pretty close to Gaza, but he didn't enter Gaza. The book of Genesis takes place in what's called on this map the West Bank. When Abraham, chapter 12 of the book of Genesis, is called upon God to leave Mesopotamia, to leave the land in which he was born, and go to the land that I will show you, he entered the land at the very top of the West Bank, Nablus, Shechem. And most of his life was spent on the north-south axis, going from Shechem, Nablus, down to Shiloh, down to Beit El, down to what today is Ramallah, Jerusalem, and down to Bethlehem, and then through my backyard, in Gush Etzion, down to Beit Umar and Hebron, and then to Beersheba. Abraham spent all his life, most of his life there. And that's true not just for him, not just for Isaac, not just for Jacob. It's true for the time of Joshua. When the Israelite tribes, after 40 years in the desert, entered the land, most of them were concentrated there. And it's true for later Jewish history, First Temple period, the return of the Jews, the beginning of the Second Temple period. That's where they were at the time of the Maccabees. You all heard of Hanukkah. All of the Maccabean battles happened in that strip of land, specifically in the vicinity of Jerusalem and south. South of Jerusalem is Judah, north is Samaria. So I realize I'm making a political statement when I say where I'm living, but that's not my primary consciousness. I want to, and I do, live in a place where I can wake up in the morning and know this is where Abraham walked. And I want to live in a place where I can go to sleep at night and know this is where David had the administrative center of his capital, in Hebron and in Jerusalem. I want to live in a place where I know that the greatest events of Jewish history took place right there, because as a believing Jew, as a historical Jew, as one who learns the pages of the Bible and they're real for me, I want to be where I learn the Bible not just by opening those pages, but by putting the Bible in my backpack and walking outside and seeing the artifacts, seeing what was left by David. You know, the city has just been, in the past 10 years, only a 10-minute drive from my house, uncovered that we know is one of David's administrative centers. The Battle of David and Goliath. You can go there, I have many times, and see actually where the two are standing. Where was David, where is Goliath? So many events of Jewish history, most of the important ones, are right there, and I want to be where it all happened. I want to tell you something that many of the Christians in the room know, Jews less, Muslims perhaps have never heard of this. There's a prophecy in the Hebrew Bible, among the 50 or 100 prophecies that predict the return of the Jewish people to our land at some point. There's a prophecy called Hazon Atzamot Yeveshot, the vision of the dry bones. It's in the book of Ezekiel, Yechezkel. And there, the prophet is asked by God, what do you see? And the prophet says, God, I see a valley of dry bones. And God says to the prophet, can those bones live? The prophet says, God, only you know. And then, before his eyes, in his mind's eye, it's a dream, it's a vision, the prophet sees that the graves open up, the bones arise. And then it's bone to bone, and then flesh comes upon them and sinews, and then it's skin, and he sees a host of people walking upon the earth. The resurrection of the dead. And then God says to the prophet, and here's the key, these bones are the whole house of Israel. You think you're all washed up, you think there's no hope, you think you're clean cut off, you think you're dry bones. And when this prophecy was spoken, the Jewish people apparently thought they're dry bones. They thought they're never coming back from exile. They were in Babylonian exile for long years. And you know what happens in exile? The kids go to Babylonian discotheques, they don't go to Hebrew school, they don't continue the tradition. The elders say, there's nothing left of us. There's no future. We're going to rot here in exile. And even if there was someone to go back, where would we go back to? There's nothing left of Jerusalem. It's been destroyed by the Babylonians. It's only jagged stones with jackals darting in and out, where the holy temple used to be standing. So God says to the prophet, you think that you're dry bones, you think there's no future? No. Just as I can make the dry bones in your come alive, that's a metaphor that teaches that God can do everything, and God can even bring the almost dead Jewish people alive. And I live in the consciousness, and my wife and my children and my students and all my neighbors in the settlements of Judah and Samaria, we live with the consciousness that we have been dry bones for such a long time, for 2,000 years of exile, but those dry bones are alive. And we are those dry bones, standing, living, breathing, and reconstituting the Jewish people. You know, if I had read that passage from the prophet 1,500 years ago, had I been alive then, I probably would have said, I'm not sure if I believe it. I'm not sure if the Jewish people will ever be resurrected. And had I lived 1,000 years ago, in Spain or Egypt, let's say, I'm not sure if I would have had the faith to believe that the Jewish people one day will be reconstituted as we were meant to be upon our land. And had I lived 500 years ago, I probably wouldn't have had the faith. Had I lived 100 years ago, I probably would not have had the faith. Had I lived in 1941 or 42, or 1943, or 44, or 45, I certainly would not have believed that there's any future for the Jewish people. Because in 1941, and although more so in 1945, the Jewish people were not figuratively dry bones. We were literally dry bones. We were dry bones. And we were ashes. And we were cakes of soap, and we were smoke coming out of the chimneys of the crematoria of Bergen-Belsen and Auschwitz. And had you asked me then, can those dry bones live? Can smoke come alive again? Can cakes of soap walk upon the land of Israel? Can the little that's left of us reconstitute itself as a living, sovereign nation in our ancient homeland? The answer, of course, would have been no, it's impossible. That was in 1945. And 3 years later, in 1948, those dry bones were alive. That nation had risen from the ashes like the phoenix. And if you don't believe it, one of those dry bones is talking to you right now. And for me, and for all the other living dry bones, it's really, really powerful, and it's really, really meaningful, and it's really, really significant, and it's the whole meaning of our lives to live in the land of Israel and to live in the center, the biblical heartland of the land of Israel in Judah and Samaria, and see it all come alive where Abraham began it long more than 3,000 years ago. And I think that the power and the righteousness and the truth of the story I just told you, I think the power and the righteousness and the truth of that story have blinded me for all of my life to another truth. The truth of the Palestinians. I didn't see. I was so wrapped up in the fulfillment of God's vision for the Jewish people that I didn't see what it was doing to another people. I didn't see them as individuals. I didn't see them as a collective. They didn't exist. They were invisible. And I think that it's not just me that didn't see them. It's all of my family and all of my students and all of my neighbors and all of the Jews in Judah and Samaria, and to a large degree, many of the Jews in all of the land of Israel, and all of the state of Israel. We just don't see that there's another people there whose rights and whose dignity and whose very humanity is being trampled. We just don't see. And this blindness didn't begin yesterday, in my opinion. In 1880 and 1890, in the turn of the 20th century, when the first Zionist pioneers came streaming into the land of Israel to create our new old state, to rise from the ashes after 2,000 years of long, hard, bloody exile. We were so filled with the vision of our righteous fulfillment that we didn't see that there was someone else there before us. We didn't see. And I want to tell you that I have been taught, and I've taught thousands of students, that when we entered the land, there was no one else there. It was empty. It wasn't. There was someone else there before us, and we just didn't see them. And in 1948, when we struggled against 5 Arab armies that wanted to annihilate us, and we established our state after all those years of exile, Jewish sovereignty, the War of Independence, we didn't see that our triumph was another nation's tragedy. We didn't see. And in 1967, 19 years after the War of Independence, the Six-Day War, the Jewish people, the state of Israel, came back to Judah and Samaria, came back to the West Bank. We conquered our ancient homeland, its heartland, in order to allow me and other Jews who live the Bible, in order to allow us to come back and walk and live and breathe where Abraham walked. We didn't see that in walking in Abraham's footsteps, we were trampling the rights of over 2 million Palestinians, way over 2 million Palestinians. We didn't see. And I have to tell you the story of how I began to open my eyes. It was only in January of 2014. That's not too many months ago. And it happened, you just saw it on the board. You just saw it in the movie. That movie showed you the first time in the life of this Jew that I ever met a Palestinian. As I said earlier, we live right next to each other, but we don't have any contact. No contact at all. And I'll tell you how far that distance goes. We live in separate villages and towns. We live in separate municipalities. The people who pick up my garbage don't pick up their garbage. Separate school systems, of course, separate religions, separate languages, separate calendars, completely different media. Newspaper, radio, television. What I read in my newspaper, the Palestinians don't read in their newspaper. The economic systems, jobs, by and large, entertainment, no connection. 2 different systems at the time that we're living right next to each other. We drive on the same road, see the other through the windshield, but the other is the consummate other. And until 15 months ago, I had met and not met Palestinians. I had met Palestinians while I was wearing a uniform, and they were showing me their documents at a checkpoint. And I'd met Palestinians sitting and standing in my home and having them as laborers in my garden or to fix the plumbing. But never in my life had I met as an equal a Palestinian. And then you know what happened? I got an email from a Protestant pastor in Reston, Virginia, who said he heard, I won't tell you the whole story, that I was interested in meeting for the first time I like Palestinians. And he told me that he, for the past 3 years, had been coming to the Holy Land twice a year, meeting Palestinians, meeting settlers, and introducing them to each other. And he said he wants to introduce me to a Palestinian. Okay, so John came from Virginia, came to the Holy Land, sat in my living room. I told him the story that I told you about my Judaism, my Zionism. And he said, I want to introduce you to some people. I said, fine. That's why I invited you to my home. Next Thursday afternoon, he gave me the directions of how to get there. Thursday rolled around. I walked to the front door of my house, and I told my wife where I was going. And she said what she should have said, given where we live and how we live. She said, don't go. It's dangerous. And I went anyway. I closed the door behind me, and I walked just 20 minutes through the Palestinian vineyards and fields, orchards around my home. And my heart was pounding. I didn't know what it was going to be like. Perhaps it was dangerous. And I get to that piece of land that you saw in the movie. Land owned by Ali's family. And for the first time in my life, I met Palestinians. There were about 20 from each side, 25 from each side. I walked up to a woman who was not in the film. She was wearing brown from head to toe. I can only see her face. I walked right up to her. I don't know what got into me. I just said hello. And she spoke English. She told me a little bit about herself. Talked about the weather. And one of the first things that one of us said was probably me, knowing me, I can't believe I'm talking to you. And the answer was, I can't believe I'm talking to you. But we were talking. And she calls over her husband, who's a friend of mine to this day. His name is Jamal. And we start talking. And Jamal tells me they live in Beit Umar. Beit Umar is not on the map, but it's a big Palestinian town. Now, it turns out that he's my neighbor. Because Beit Umar and the lone shul where I live are right next to each other, just with a fence in the middle. Now, I remember from years ago, when the winds were blowing in the right direction in the evening, we could hear, sitting outside in the backyard, Palestinians talking in their homes. We didn't know who they were. They were from the place where the kids throw rocks at us, where they're all terrorists, where they all want to throw us into the sea. And now I'm meeting one of those people, and he turns out to be a human being. It was very disconcerting. So I tell him that I live in a lone shul. He lives in Beit Umar, so he gets out his smartphone to show me on Google Maps where he lives, and I couldn't believe that Palestinians have smartphones. It sounds funny, but I was startled that he took this thing out of his pocket, and he showed me on Google Maps where he lives, and I couldn't believe that he could go to Google Maps so quickly. I didn't even know what it was at that point. So he shows me that he lives right on the border of Beit Umar, and right next to his house is a fence. On the other side of the fence is Hanan dressing his house. We are really neighbors with an unbelievable divide between us. And I remembered, as I was talking to him, I remembered that a long time ago, when my children were young, with infants in the house, and you know, sometimes parents get angry at their kids and they curse. It doesn't happen to you guys, but it happened in our home. So my wife used to curse the kids. You know what she used to say? Go to Beit Umar. Translation into English, go to hell. And now I'm meeting someone from hell. It was really hard. It was really surprising. So Jamal says, you know, Hanan, when our kids see someone with a big kippah like yours, they start to cry. What did you say? Why did they start to cry? So he says, like he couldn't understand why I don't get it. So he said, well, you guys have long beards. I'm supposed to think like because of my beard the kids cry? He sees I don't get it. So he says, you know, Hanan, people that look like you with these big kippot, long beards, that carry submachine guns and they kill our kids. That's what he said to me, those words. And I had no idea what he's talking about. But then I began to think, like 2 or 3 seconds, and I suddenly realized, I suddenly saw how Jamal and his kids see me. Because I know that many times, hundreds of times, I walk through the fields to feel the biblical heartland under my feet, to be in the dust that Abraham walked in. And of course we go out with some machine guns. It's dangerous out there. And I suddenly realized how I look with my gun to Jamal and his kids. It's frightening. These people look so different, with passion in their eyes and those guns hanging from their shoulders. I got it. I got it at that moment. And then Jamal said to me, like just for emphasis, you know, Hanan, we're all afraid of you. And I said, what do you mean, we're all afraid of you? And we looked at each other and we realized that we're afraid of each other. And in that situation of distance and being so close but so far away, no contact, of course there's going to be ignorance and fear, suspicion, resentment, stereotypes, and hate. And I'm now talking to Jamal, and I don't know what to do myself. And then we sat in a circle, we saw the circle at the end of the evening in the film, and Shaul, one of the co-founders of our group, together with Ali, talks, and then Ali talks. Ali talked, I don't know for how long. And just an hour after I had met a Palestinian for the first time, now I'm hearing a speech from a Palestinian for the first time in my life. And he talks well, and it makes sense. He tells the story of growing up under Israeli occupation What did you say? Occupation? I never heard that word used before vis-a-vis myself. I'm not an occupier. I am fulfilling God's will for the Jewish people, fulfilling the prophecies of Ezekiel, of Isaiah, of Jeremiah. And suddenly I hear someone say that you guys are occupiers. He didn't say it accusatorily. He just described the situation in which he grew up under occupation. And he talked about the lack of rights. He talked about lack of dignity. He talked about being stopped at checkpoints. I had never, ever, ever heard such a reality in my life. Even though I had lived in it, I never, ever saw it. And he told the story of his village, his grandparents' home of 1948, 1967, the first Intifada, the second Intifada. And I heard the building blocks of my identity, of my history, being mentioned and being woven together into narratives so different than the one I know. And it was so challenging and so offensive. I was offended. I was grating, I was churning inside when I was listening to him talk. But I couldn't hear him say anything that I knew to be false. Challenging, yes. Offensive, yes. Grating, yes, but not false. And I walked out of there really, really confused. I walked out of there discombobulated. I didn't know what to do with myself. And I got home, and I remember in the weeks afterwards, sometimes pacing back and forth in my study, thinking, trying to digest and process. So I'm at my computer. You know, you don't go to books anymore, it's all the internet. So I go to the computer and I find myself reading all these leftist websites that a good religious Jew like me should never be caught dead reading. And they're saying things that are directly against me. They're talking about the terrible things the settlers are doing. And this is not just offensive now, I'm steaming. And I'm resentful at what I'm reading. But I read things that appear to be true. And I know that they're true because I've seen the trampling of Palestinian rights, but I never saw it. I was there. I even participated in it. But it didn't enter my consciousness. And now, after meeting Palestinians, just that human contact with just 5 or 6 people somehow opened up my heart, my mind, and my soul to see what I'd never seen, to hear what I'd never heard, to absorb what I was never able to absorb. That doesn't mean that it was easy. So I'm reading these websites and I'm beginning to read books, and I go back and I meet more Palestinians, especially I go back to meet other Jews who were there at this event and ask them how they processed all this. And there were times in which I felt that nausea, absolute nausea, spiritual nausea. I didn't know what to do with my identity. It's like I had to pick up my stomach from the ground, put it back in a few times, it keeps falling out. And I keep learning new things that I should have known but never saw. And these days I'm still a work in progress, but the nausea has abated. And I feel that I'm developing an identity, and the best way I can describe the identity that's being formed in my soul is to use the phrase partial truths. Partial truths. I believe 100% in my truth. I'm going to continue walking the footsteps of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm not going to leave my house. I'm going to hope that my children and my grandchildren keep living where they're living. But at the same time, I realize that my truth is only a partial truth, and there's another truth. Another truth that's just as true as my truth, and that's the Palestinian truth concerning individuals, concerning the collective as well, the Palestinian collective. And I have to take that into account. It has to become, and it is becoming, part of who I am. I want to stop for 30 seconds and tell you that I've always had upmost in my mind the words of Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cohen Cook, who lived just 90 years ago, who said, I'm translating and collating a number of texts, he said that the definition of falsehood is truth masquerading, partial truth masquerading as full truth. Because the truth in every philosophy, in every religion, in every nationality, in every movement. But truth becomes false when we mistake the partial truths as complete truths, as absolute truths, as the only truth. I know today that my truth is really, really true and really, really invigorating and really, really powerful and really, really divine, but it's not the only truth. That's my spiritual journey, which is still a work in progress. But I began to realize pretty recently, the whole thing is recent, but really recently, I began to realize that it's not enough that I embark upon and continue upon a spiritual journey. There has to be practical ramifications to my journey. Because if I see the Palestinians as human beings and I realize that they have national rights and I realize that my truth is trampling their truth and my dignity is trampling their dignity, and that my fulfillment of biblical vision is for them an occupation, and it is, then I have to do something about it. I have to somehow reach out and make amends and act differently than I've acted for the past 35 years of my life. And the story that we'll tell you, Ali will tell you, and we'll tell you afterwards, is partially about how we are transforming individuals and continue our own personal transformation, and how we're also reaching out and trying to put into practice those personal transformations. Thank you.
So hard to speak after this man. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. And thank you for bringing us here and coming to listen to what we have to say. And I think for the last few months I was listening to Hanan's story again and again and again. It just brings me to this conclusion that how much truths are deep and how much people belong to their truths. And this is one of our complex missions for building peace, to deal with these truths. Because when we think about peace, we think about specific political design of one state, two state, you know, these models that politicians propose, but we don't think that if this vision really can be effective on the ground regarding these values, these truths, these roots of the two nations. Otherwise, our peace actions, our peace negotiations, our peace agreements, our peace speech will become like whether a piece of paper that we sign in or just a dream without a plan. And for me, it's not easy to have another truth on my land. It's painful, it's hard, as Hanan said. This is a place where there is two truths, and we grow all of our life wishing, good dreaming that the other side next morning will disappear. Because it's very easy. And for me especially, growing up, becoming a refugee, when my father in 1948 has lost his land, his nationality, his home, his kids. I mean, big part of my brothers and sisters are still refugees in the diaspora. They cannot come back home. And carrying this narrative as a child, and being born to a very political mother that has joined PLO in 1970, before I was born, and being the son of the hero and the fighter, and growing up in a home that has turned to be an office for PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. And walking the streets where my chests were full of tear gas and my eyes, trying to get to my school sometimes and never being sure that I will come back, trying to sit normal in my classroom where the army sometimes come and try to get us out to play, because they are also kids in a way. It was boring to them. And spending sleepless nights, that every minute expecting, thinking that the army will come for us, like they did many times. Watching officers of the Israeli security humiliating my mother in front of my eyes, beating her in front of her eyes, in front of her child eyes. And then thinking about dreams of any future which was forbidden. That I call forbidden childhood, forbidden life, forbidden rights. This is the environment where I come from. And I was not being born to hate. I was full of love because that family was full of love. I tell you that I was trained on Kalashnikov when I was 15. That holding a weapon was not an easy issue. And I was trained and I was prepared to kill Jewish people. And I was angry enough and right enough to use that. And my heart was bleeding every day, challenging me between my humanity on one side and my political rights and my human rights even. How to bring that to harmony with my life. Even I dream in crazy dreams because the reality was forbidden. A young child, as I have a dream to be a pilot, was an insane. Because where to fly, where to study, I have no passport, I have no rights. Even my dreams has become ideal. Because in a way I was trying to escape from that reality. And I'm not a representative of the Palestinian nation that time. I'm just a child who wanted to grow up normally. And I don't care about politics. I wanted my rights. I wanted to grow up like your kids growing up. But that military management by the Israeli occupation for my life, my family, my movement, my rights, my dreams, my feelings, everything has turned to me to become a fighter, easily. And then when people ask me, why Palestinians educate their kids to hate? I get amazed of that ignorance. I mean, if you live such life, do you really need a specific curriculum for hatred? I mean, do you need someone to teach you how to hate? The best education for hatred is that occupation. It's the best education. And in 1987, when the first Intifada started, I was 15, I became a fighter. First, I started throwing stones, and I was arrested for 3 times, then I was released. Then again, I was arrested after 3 months with my mother. And I remember in my torture, my investigation, I spent 36 days. Every day for me was a nightmare. I was hoping to die every day because of the hard torture that I was in. And the only thing that the Israeli security wanted, information about my mother. And they promised me, if I don't give these information, I will be thrown to prison for 10 years. And this is clear in my file. And I said, you can't do that. Then yes, when I went to this military court, I couldn't believe that the judge decided 10 years to throw me to prison. I couldn't believe that. I was 17 years old. and my mother got 7 years and a half at the same time, and I felt all of my future now has collapsed. All of my existence has collapsed. And nothing to live for. I didn't want to live. And I always wanted to travel, to study, to go to universities, and to experience life. And the only action against Israel was throwing stones. And I don't even consider that when you throw a stone against 60-ton Merkava tank, you'll be, extremist, terrorist. You are the terrorist. They gave that terrorist 10 years to prison. And when I came back to prison, I have to say that going to prison, pieces. I felt myself pieces. I'm not collected because of that, what happened. I mean, because of these 10 years that I couldn't imagine that I'm going to spend them in prison. Then when I went to that prison, I didn't think and expect even that I'm going to the best university that you can imagine. Because Palestinian political prisoners have succeeded to set a system, a very educated, moral system for their life, to manage and lead it. Even organizing the best respected relation between them and the Israeli authority inside the prison. There was 5 committees: education, management, national security, and negotiation committee. You live in such a government. You have to wake up in the morning to go to do sports. Even I learned to smoke. I become a smoker in the prison. Come back, sit twice a day in a circle. You have to read books, learn languages. My English comes from there. I mean, big part of it. Hebrew language has become like my mother language, like my Arabic. And you have to learn and study, and people invest in you. You know, I'm the son of the heroes. They were preparing a leader. So they invested me deep. And in prison, the best part of my nation were to prison. Professors, doctors. It's not the criminal environment that you think about. So, and I remember a time when I became the youngest one in the negotiation committee with the Israeli authority. The first time when I went to negotiate for our rights in prison, I said to that officer that we both are prisoners. Let's lead it with respect. Otherwise, you have to know that we will know how to resist you, even though inside the prison. He was shocked. But that was why I said that, because I wanted to explain you how that system has collected me back to myself, to become strong again, and to have, this vision of building myself, and to invest and practice that. So after 3 years of being to prison, I wanted to visit my mother. She was in a different prison, in another prison, and Israel refused. Then we decided to go for a hunger strike, because that's the only and the best weapon to achieve rights. So I participated in a hunger strike with 5,000 political prisoners. We were asking for better conditions, and after struggling and starving 17 days, that I don't want to explain to you what happened to the person. We were facing our death every day, like carrying our life on our hands. But what was holding me and strengthening me even, the moral cause, which is to visit my mother, and the action itself, the morality of my action to achieve my rights. nonviolence. Because I'm not attacking anyone. I don't create a threat on anyone's life. It's not just the most human way. And not just even the most powerful way. It's the most respectful way. That I respect my right. That's why I act non-violently. I admire myself. I admire my life. I respect my life. And this strong, value of life has been shown to the enemy. Non-violently. Where he cannot be blind anymore. He can't. People physically can resist you. People can shoot, can kill, can damage. But no one can resist a belief when this belief engage the enemy. What I mean by that non-violence is not just asking for rights. Non-violence is engagement with the humanity of the other side. Even they don't show it, but it's there. You have to know it's there, but you have to know how to reach it. To let them know and recognize your rights. So that was the first time that I could see something powerful more than physical action. And I could visit my mother. Then after that I was released, me and her, by Oslo Peace Initiative. And our mission was, and here it's so important to me that you will understand what I'm going to say now. Because that was the key of the failure of Oslo Peace Agreement. After 1994, we were prepared and supposed to have another identity. What I mean by that, before that time, we identified with the revolution. Revolution against the occupier, the Intifada, the Palestinian uprising. That was our identity as Palestinians. But after that, because we were hoping by the signing of peace agreement to reach independence, then to switch from being fighters to become citizens. And not belonging to a political party who lead war or resistance, just to belong to an authority that has constitution and it's recognized by even the international community. Then our mission was, as leaders, to transform the nation to that place, from that place to that place, and to build the whole Palestinian constitutions and to prepare the ground for the statehood. But what happens? The opposite. I become an officer and I arrested Palestinians that few months before I was one of them. I arrested them because we really believed that it has to be one representative of that nation, the Palestinian Authority. And we wanted to consider violence as a crime, as illegal at least, illegal action. But we were challenged. We were challenged by the continuation of the military occupation on the ground, where the Palestinian has been authorized with another authority. Palestinians were supporting their authority because they were hoping to get rid from the other authority, which is the occupation. But then Palestinians felt after that there was another authority added on them, preventing them from resisting the occupier and not giving them their full rights, a right even of movement. These are the keys Because the one who can say hatred, extremism, you can blame, but if you want to understand what happens, this is what I experience. The other thing, part of the corruption, which has caused despair, anger among the nation. Third, for sure, that environment gives credibility to violence attack. Then suddenly suicide bomber and attacks that we never led before as Palestinians. We never blow up ourselves. It's new. Fourth, investment, political investment in our conflict by internationals, by outsiders. Because we are also victims of many outsiders. They invest in our blood, in our life. Then finally, we sign a piece of paper. And that was just a piece of paper, not a piece of paper. Because peace has to have values on the ground. Values of freedom, dignity, economy, rights, security for all the people. We couldn't see that in that piece. And we couldn't even know each other. I couldn't know what does Gush Etzion mean to that man. Not to agree or to disagree, just to understand how can I lead any negotiation with this man. If I don't understand your life, your narrative, your feelings and your mind, how can I create a joint thing with you? There was no even joint committee, reconciliation committee, management committee, anything. One collecting the both nations together. We couldn't know that. Then finally, 2000, as a consequences of all of that, the second intifada started. I was badly wounded, as Haskell said, and my brother was very violently killed. So what do? All of my life was crisis. And I was prepared to kill and ready, and there was enough hatred and anger to feed that revenge. And there was that place that you want to punish the other side. You don't need a specific ideology, really, to revenge. It's also with our psychological, personal, whatever you call it. So you think, how many Israelis shall I kill? What could be the dead number of people that can feed this pain? How many Israeli mothers has to cry, to experience, and to realize that my mother don't deserve to cry? And how many dead bodies has to be created for Israel to wake up and know that killing an innocent person, taking him from his family and his kids, will not secure another nation? And how much anger has to be invested to bring him back, to bring my brother back, my brother. Because your revenge, and it's endless. Even I kill you, you kill me, it's endless. A cycle of blood. And I spent many sleepless nights, I couldn't sleep. What to do? This non-violence political mind with this heart which was bleeding. What to do? And you go out on the street and you see these soldiers controlling your life. And how can you even think about reconciliation while they're still, feeding you with anger and hatred? How can you deal with that? And you feel the injustice. And then you have to act peacefully. So I was stuck. 1 year after, my mother received a group of bereaved parents, Israeli bereaved parents who have lost someone in the conflict. And it was shocking to me to see an Israeli sitting in my home having a cup of tea with respect. They used to be there, but they never were welcome. They used to arrest, damage, But these are the people who paid the highest price in the conflict, are willing to come to my home and understand me. This is not the face that I know about Israel. These are not the soldiers in checkpoints. It took Israel 32 years of my life to show me an Israeli crying. I couldn't imagine really that Jewish people have tears or they have feeling regarding what they do to us. But that meeting has changed my life. I become an activist. Since 2002, my life hasn't become easier, I promise you. It has become more complex. Today I believe that both sides are acting, thinking, planning, designing, moving, feeling just as victims. Both sides. And victims will always have this competition of suffering. Who suffers more? We are good in that. Because we have very painful background. It's full of rightness and victimhood. And this one of the keys to understand what has to happen to have peace in that land. That people has first to give up feeling a victim and say we survive, we are there, but there is a future. We cannot design and manage it by victimhood. And we even have this competition of rightness. Who's more right? That's why we have no rights. Third, I realized that there is a huge emotional issues behind politics. And not just religious issues, emotions. I realized that the Jewish fear has become our biggest enemy. And we don't feel guilty about that fear. This fear mostly comes from the Jewish history, from the Holocaust. But we also add fear on it. Why? Because we also raising our resistance for independence, which has created a threat on Jewish people. I'm explaining the complexity of the situation. Palestinians, what leads them every day is not hatred. I mean, you hear my story. The daily Palestinian lack of rights and the injustice on the ground has created violence this violence is the consequences of suffering. It's not the consequences of hatred. I speak to Palestinian fighters. The last meeting was with 60 wanted people in Jenin sitting with their weapon on their legs. We spoke for hours, I promise you. Part of these kids, most of them are bereaved members of families that have lost someone, then they become fighters. And then when you create a place for them to deal with that pain, they become effective and leaders for change. That's why, and not because of me, they signed 2 years ago, they signed an agreement giving back all of their weapons and they are not fighting anymore. No one wants to die. This is the psyche of human being. No one has been born to die. Death is a threat. But when people lose their fear to die, by losing their love for their life, then I'm not surprised that people blow up themselves. They have lost their connection to life. And this is what we are talking about for peace building. And the peace movement itself, in a way, is stuck. The peace movement has no strategy. The peace movement has no vision. The peace movement, you see the best peace activists as politicians, just the retired ones. Just after they retired, generals and politicians, they become Mandelas in building peace. And you see these invitations to 5-star peace conferences, 5-star peace. That one of these conferences can feed my village for 1 year. Peace. And or you see, this naive movement that has created a gap between themselves and the reality. So part of us, we go and hug each other and eat hummus and, it's nice. And the peace movement is not courageous enough to act where the heart of the problem is. West Bank. I mean, my life has not become miserable because of the lefties in these nice peace cafes in Tel Aviv. My life has become miserable because the army has to manage security for settlers. And there is extreme settlers leading movements. This is the hot part of the conflict. Because these settlers are serving their truth. They will fight until the last drop of blood for that story. And Palestinians will not give up their rights, even they're belonging to Jaffa and Haifa. So how do you design a political design which will include these roots together? And how do you act now to reach that without talking to each other? Because people will consider us who speak to settler as normalizing. How can you normalize the relation with the occupier without having first any political rights? But I think we don't know what is nonviolence is. That's why we come up with these statements. Because dialogue is not to give up your rights. Dialogue is to be the best representative of your truth. Where your truth will not just become truth because you believe on it. No. The real truth when others believe on it, not just you. This is the real truth. And until two sides will believe in each other's truth, we will not have peace. And until even the price of peace, the painful price of peace, will be cheaper than the price of war, we will never have peace. But sometimes, as victims, we accept the price of war because we have no hope of any normal life. We sacrifice. We throw ourselves easily to our politicians, the good sailors of our blood. So it has to become a national movement. Organizations will not change conflict. It has to be a national movement that we are now creating. Palestinians in the West Bank. Change, Tahrir in Arabic. The Palestinian national non-violence movement that has to build an identity, a new identity for the Palestinian to act and to deal with this confusion between being fighters or being citizens. Then the second project, which is Roots, JUDUR, SHORASHIM, mostly with settlers and Palestinians in that land, just trying to open others' eyes without giving up anything. Just to prove that even in the heart of the problem, people who are not supposed to speak to each other, if they can create any hope, so everyone can. Everyone can. Third, engagement of the international community. That's why we are here. We're not here just to give you hope. And we are not here representing victimhood or rightness or anything. We are here because I believe part of your policy in your country causing me hard time. And I believe that any action by me as a Muslim, as an Arab, as a Palestinian, as a human being, that I will take will affect your life. Whether in opposite or negative or positive. So you have a mission. We cannot just giving representations about peace. We have to act for peace. We have to empower this human being in front of these bulldozers that we call politicians. Because they are managers of hatred. They know how to manage conflict. They are not leaders for change. And giving labels to these or to those will not help. Being pro this or pro that, I promise you, will not help. Because none of us is going to disappear. But being pro-solution in an active way, not pro-solution and you sit back home. I think you have a mission and you have a responsibility. We belong to you. We belong to the global human world, to the international law. We belong to it. Let us be together effectively to prove that extremists are not representative of us. We cannot do this without having our normal life and this uniteness between all of us. So whether you are right-wing, left-wing, I don't know, well-knowing, I don't care. You don't have to be clever to realize that. It's very easy. So this is the time now that the key of the whole what's going on in the Middle East has to open that door. You see what's going on now in the world, the whole world, because of these nice heroes who sit in these Congress and Parliament, where they tear our life miserable. We cannot. Our blood is not for sale. That's what we want. And I believe, finally, and this is the last thing that I'm going to say, I believe the minute that the environment of the global world by human being and humanity will be easier for people to live in, no one will be able
No one would have the chutzpah.
Yes, chutzpah is no one will dare to raise his extreme voice or action publicly like what's going on, that it's like we don't exist. We are the majority. We are the majority. And I'm not talking about voting for peace. Peace will not come by voting. Because you vote for peaceful people, when they reach that place, they turn, they change. Because there is a culture that has to be changed before asking from others to change reality. Obama, when he came to Tel Aviv, he said, you have to know, he was talking to the nation, that courageous leaders will not take courageous steps toward peace until the nations will not push them to that. We need that push, not push. Thank you very much.
Don't be an arrogance, you have to learn that. Push. They're going to speak now practically about the work that they are doing for about 6-7 minutes. Then they'll take questions. If you have to leave, I hope you'll stay another 25 minutes at least. Maybe 9 o'clock will bring this to a close formally. If you have to leave, then take a sheet that explains what they do and how you can help them, at least financially, but it's a moral statement as well. And their website is here. There's an envelope that goes with this explanation sheet that links this Jew and this Muslim with a Christian pastor on Reston Parkway in Reston, Virginia. So how's that for an Abrahamic partnership? Right here. That church is the conduit for tax-exempt contribution.
So we're going to take 5 or 6 minutes to tell you exactly what we're doing. And perhaps we'll then have 5 minutes of slides on what we're doing, and then questions and answers for as long as we're able. Okay, so as you saw in the film, Ali's family has this piece of land, this piece of agricultural land. It happens to be situated in a very rare place. It's not within a Palestinian town or village or city, and it's not an Israeli settlement. Had it been in a Palestinian town or village or city, Israelis couldn't go. Legally, they couldn't go, and also they would be afraid to go. Had it been an Israeli settlement, Palestinians couldn't enter. But it just happens to be the rare piece of land that's accessible to both sides. And on this little piece of land, two amazing movements are now being created before your eyes. Ali mentioned both of them, and I'll elaborate. One is Change, the Palestinian nonviolent movement, which is developing a Palestinian identity of nonviolence. And the second movement is Roots, JUDUR, SHORASHIM, a local Palestinian-Israeli initiative for understanding nonviolence and transformation. And what we're doing in Roots is trying to create a framework, context in which Israelis and Palestinians can do that unbelievable, impossible thing of seeing each other, of talking to each other, of meeting each other. And through that process of the human contact, we want to bring people to appreciate the other, see the other, accept the other's narrative, the other's truth. And our understanding is, our belief is, that any peace agreement signed under the present circumstances would be worthless, because the people on the ground are not ready to make peace. They don't see the other yet. So what we see ourselves as doing is not offering political solutions, although we think about such things, but our raison d'etre, the purpose, the goal, the vision of our movement, of Roots, is not to give a political solution, it's to create the human capital that will allow any future solution, political solution, to hold. So I'll just tell you what we're doing. We have gatherings like the one you saw in the film, bringing families together to talk to each other, both informally and sitting around a circle. We have children's programs. Just 2 days ago, we had an exhibit at the end of a photography workshop. We brought together 5 Palestinian kids, 5 Israeli kids, once a week getting together, learning to use the camera, to see life from the other side of the lens. It was the second group of 10 kids, and at the end of each group, there's an exhibit. Ali and I weren't there, but we got emails about how beautiful it was. And in addition to that, for kids, we have a summer camp. Now, if you remember, last year, during the summer, was the war in Gaza. And we had planned the camp and then postponed it because of the war, and then planned it and postponed it, and planned it and postponed it. And finally, we said, it was actually me that said we have to do it, we did it. During the war. And it was just 2 days. But it was 20, 25 kids from each side who actually were under the same tent together, playing with the same boa constrictor, this one holding the snake from this side, this one holding the snake from the other side, and you see the fear, but this time it was fear of the snake and not of the other, in the eyes of the kids. And together, they're together in their fear. And in their joy afterwards, after they got used to it. And then playing with the clay together. And then the petting zoo, like I said. And then we had a donkey, we had games together, soccer. The second day of the camp, we went to the beach together. We were planning to go to the beach in Ashdod, but the rockets started falling again, so the Palestinian Israeli kids in the same bus had to flee from the rockets. Instead of going to Ashdod in the south, we had to go up to the north, beyond the reach of the rockets. What is that like? Palestinian Israeli kids together fleeing from violence. And I have to tell you that the truth is, those kids didn't talk to each other so much in the bus, no common language. But we sat in the same bus together. That's amazing. And we heard each other talking their language. And we heard them singing their songs. That does something to you as a little kid. It did something to me as a grandfather. And then in the water together, yeah, we weren't talking to each other, but we were looking at each other. And we were feeling the presence of the other. And we sat down under the tent and we ate hummus together. And it was something beautiful. And we want to do the summer camp again this year. In addition to the summer camp, we also have groups learning each other's language together. Palestinians really sitting together and each learning Hebrew and Arabic together. We have a women's group. We have local leadership groups. We have interfaith dialogue groups. And we have, okay, so I now explain to you the inner circle of what we do. We really are working on the ground, local people in Gush Etzion in the area, Beit Umar, Bethlehem, Hebron. That's what's really important to us. But we also have the second circle. And that's the effect we're trying to have on Palestinians and Israelis throughout, not just locally, within the 5-mile radius of where we live. And we go to schools to speak Palestinian schools, go to speak in Israeli schools. One of those really important programs that brings people from further beyond our radius into our programs is the following. There's a phenomenon in Israel of gap year programs. It's pretty new in the past 10 years. In this past year, there were 4,000 Israelis who finished high school and didn't go immediately to the army, but went to different programs, pre-military academies, some of them focusing on physical fitness, some focusing on Zionism, some on Judaism, some on social service. But more and more of those programs are now bringing their students to hear Ali, an Israeli, speak for 3 hours. And that changes them indelibly. You're talking about kids who are going to be in the army another 5 months, 10 months. And now they're meeting a Palestinian, in most cases for the first time. Meeting a Palestinian and a settler together, respecting each other. And that has its effect. Has its effect on the future of the Israeli army. What else can I tell you? And of course, then we have our third circle, in which we have guests from all over the world. From Geneva, from London, from Australia, and especially from the United States, about 90% Jews, and about 8% Christians, and perhaps 2% Muslims, who come to hear us speak, as you heard tonight. We believe, we don't keep track, but we believe that altogether 7,000 people in the past year have come to our center, this little piece of land in Gush Etzion. And from what we hear from emails from around the world, people indeed are just at least a little bit transformed by what they hear and by seeing the work that we do. So, on the decision, should we show the slides or take questions? Take questions are more important, right? Yeah, questions are more important. So, no problem.
So if you have a question, you're going to speak into the microphone so that everybody can hear. Okay? And I'll let you to.
Okay, so first.
First of all, Ali, I just want to say for what you and your family have endured, I'm so sorry for what you endured. The work you guys are doing is fantastic. I think you need to challenge yourselves more to come up with a comprehensive peace framework. I think until you do that, what you're doing is not going to generate the end goal. You're going to stay at the roots and not reach the top of the tree. And I think it's going to take tough words from Ali to his people, tough words from you, Rabbi, to your people. I mean, you're among a modern Orthodox group which can definitely handle it. So you need to say tough words to them like Palestinian refugees have the right to return. Ali, you need to say tough words to your people. Jewish people have a right to pray at the holy sites, including the Temple Mount. It should be a shared site like other holy sites. I think until you have a comprehensive peace framework that deals with the tough issues like the Jewish right to have a Jewish state, the Palestinians have a right to something similar, a Palestinian state, whether it's in personally I prefer a binational solution, whether it's a two-state, binational, or a modified one-state solution. Until you go there, what you're doing is going to fall short. It's going to do great things, and it'll probably save lives, but it won't get you to the top of the tree.
I'm chomping at the bit when I hear a question like that. It's a very good point. Okay, so I think there's a lot of truth in what you said. I will do now two things. I'll explain why we're not going in that direction. And then I'll explain that perhaps at a certain point we will. Then I'll explain what personally my vision is, political vision. So it looks to me, were we to submit to the public any peace plan, we'd be shooting ourselves in the feet at this point. Because my people, the Jews, Israeli settlers, are not willing to hear anything about political compromise, and any peace plan has in it compromise. Because my people don't see the other at all. We first have to, my opinion, or our opinion, help both sides to see the other. And the only way Israelis will come to talk to Palestinians is if they're not told it demands any compromises. Of course, we're hoping that we'll come to see the humanity in the other and then be willing to make compromises. But at this point, were we to submit a peace plan, roots would be finished. And that might also be true on the Palestinian side, because they're also, peace requires some type of compromise, as we just heard. And to put the compromise on the table before the people are ready, before they know the narrative and the truth of the narrative of the other, I think might be suicidal. But as we go forward, there might be a point that you're right, we reach a tipping point, and people have joined our movement, and then if we don't submit a plan, people say, well, what's the end game? What are you moving towards? How is it going to change our lives for the better on the ground? Palestinians will certainly say that. So that's true. So we're in a difficult point here. There are certain things we can't say yet. After saying that, I want to tell you that although in SHORASHIM and Roots we don't have the political vision that was just suggested we should have, many of the activists in meeting the other, and talking to the other, and learning about the truth of the other, we have come to a certain vision of, at least I have and many others, of what we're thinking. So I'm going to tell you in 3 minutes what I'm thinking. It goes like this. I've seen many times as an Israeli the Hamas emblem. And what I see there is the map of the land from the Mediterranean to the Jordan, without a border, with the Hamas flag over it, telling me, and telling every Jew, go to hell. Into the sea. There's no place for you to land. And that really, really, really bothers, how do you say, challenges us Israelis. But on the other hand, I've begun to realize recently that us Jews do the same thing. Because we have the emblem of the religious Zionist youth movement, it's called B'nai Akiva, has a little lapel patch. And it's the same map on it, with the whole land without a border from the Mediterranean to the Jordan, with an Israeli flag over it. But it's a tale of the Palestinians. But it says, go to hell. So both of us do not recognize the narrative and the truth of the other. And why do I say all that? Because I believe, you're going to shoot me for saying this, I believe that the Hamas emblem is true and legitimate. But I also believe the B'nai Akiva emblem is true and legitimate. In other words, I really believe that the Palestinians have deep historical rights, religious rights, cultural rights to the whole land. Ali's heritage is not just in the West Bank, it's also in Tel Aviv, it's also in Haifa, it's also in the village his grandfather grew up in, Kubega, which is now a place called Kiryat Gat, within the Green Line. And the Jews, as I spoke earlier, I believe have deep historical, cultural, religious, national rights, not just to Tel Aviv, and not just to the coast, but to my home, to Gush Etzion, to the West Bank, to Judah and Samaria. So I believe personally the truth is that both peoples deserve the whole land. Sounds like a recipe for war. And that's what we have today. So I can't accept a two-state solution. Divide in the middle would be injustice to both sides. And that injustice would fester a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades until it gets to better, but the whole thing blows up. I don't believe in a two-state solution. I also don't believe in a one-state solution. Because at least from my point of view, the Jewish point of view, we need our own state, our own sovereignty. What we've been hoping and praying and crying for 2,000 years. So no two-state solution, no one-state solution. What do? You actually hinted to what I'm about to say.
Binational.
No, binational is one state. What I'm thinking is a hybrid between one state and two state. And the 3 words that describe that hybrid are the following. Soft borders, federation. So what does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means draw a line on the Green Line that separates the West Bank from Israel, Palestinians on one side, Israelis on the other side, but both peoples on both sides. Soft borders. In other words, Palestinians have their state and their sovereignty, but they can live wherever they want. But as Palestinian citizens, not as Israeli citizens. Palestinians can live wherever they want, Tel Aviv, Jaffa, Haifa, but as Palestinian citizens. And Israelis have citizenship on their side of the line, but they can live wherever they want, including my house. In other words, a peace plan like that recognizes that the truth is that both peoples have deep rights to both sides of the Green Line. And if we don't recognize those deep rights to both sides of the Green Line for both people, then I think it's going to blow up in our face. And then, after you have those open borders, you can live and move wherever you want without a passport. Then we need a federation. Between these two peoples, we already have a name for it. The Abrahamic Partnership. Abrahamic Federation. There's so many questions.
one begin over there.
So I just wanted to say that Palestinians have been left with 15% approximately of their original land. Would you go along with that number? I don't know exactly what it is, but it's not, I mean, even just to, I had another question, but to come to your last answer, if you say they can live wherever they want, are they starting out with 15% of the land?
The Green Line.
But what about all the settlements inside the Green Line, which are, I think, illegal settlements? Would you agree they're illegal by international law?
I'm not expert in international law. I'm not an expert in international law. It doesn't depend on my opinion. But what I can tell is what I've said already. That from the perspective of a Jew, of a Zionist with Jewish history on his back, if Jews don't live there, then part of our heart is cut out of our soul.
And Palestinian parts?
I believe it has to be first a political recognition for that green line which divides between two states, fully. What Hanan is talking about as a Jew having a religious rights to live on the land, not what I mean. He can talk about himself. It's not about political argument. I mean, serving his religious right without a political argument, without a political situation that will affect the Palestinian badly. On the other hand, as a price of that, we're talking about 5 million Palestinian refugees that has to come back. And this situation will bring them back wherever they want to. I mean, many of them will not go back by their choice, but it's different than to choose or to be forced to. Finally, in my opinion, this is not the point, all of that. The point is to want solution. We are not in that place. Wanting solution is not to be tired of conflict and not to be hoping for peace. Wanting solution is acting for peace. I don't believe in any political design until the two nations will decide to give the strength to their politicians to decide. I'm not here to represent a political plan because I'm not a politician, hopefully. Thanks God. I'm not a politician until now. But on the other hand, I know that there is values of any successful peace design. These values has to include what are you talking about and what Hanan is talking about. To reach that conclusion, I think it's not impossible. Because if you tell me between France and Germany that this will be just a line between these two countries, I will tell you that you've lost your mind. Now people live together. Everything can be possible if we want it. The problem is, because of these arguments about whether 50% of the Jewish rights or the two-state, one-state, I think we prevent ourselves from peace. Because there is, to every initiative, there is its own camp, and they are competing. They are fighting each other, while people are dying. So I'm not interested to discuss any political design, because by the end of the day, a political solution for me means my independence, my roots and my nationality and my freedom. If this peace will not include these values in my life, I will not believe in it. But I have to work for it, which means the transformation itself will prepare people for not just even maybe 50% or 70%, but people are not prepared. That's what are we trying to tell you. We are preparing people to act for solution. That's what we need, really. Otherwise, we signed political agreements. We already, I promise you, Oslo Peace Initiative is signed between us. But where is it? Nowhere. Nowhere.
I guess we'll start from the side. Continue, I should say.
This question is directed at Awwad, or would be interested in hearing everyone's thoughts on this matter. But my question is, what are your thoughts on the nonviolent BDS movement, and do you think it's effective in ending Israeli apartheid, or do we need something more?
Well, I believe BDS is a choice for people to choose to help that situation. I cannot decide for people what's helpful for them or for not, as long as they are non-violent. I can give analyzing, but I believe that I said it always, and I will keep saying it always. If you reach a level that you cannot anymore, it's better to boycott than to blow up yourself. Always. Second, I think this is the consequences of the continuation of the frozen peace mind, political mind of politicians. This is the consequences. Third, I will never decide to people or judge people or give statements about their movement if they believe in it and if it's non-violence. If it's non-violence, I will support any non-violence action, even against me, by Jewish people, against me. Because an Israeli asked me a question in Tel Aviv. I was speaking in a conference. He said, why you raise non-violence against the occupation and against Israel? Why you don't raise non-violence against Hamas? And I said, well, why don't you raise non-violence against Hamas? Yeah, so.
I'll take a shot at that. So briefly, it looks to me that BDS is a non-violent, violent movement. In other words, it's a way of waging war, non-violently, and like Ali said, that's better than violence, but it is based on the assumption that the only way to move forward is by attacking the other on some level. And it looks to me that if we keep attacking each other, we're not going to reach peace. We have to stop attacking each other and support each other. That I learned from Ali. If you want peace, support the other side. Listen to their narrative, strengthen them, so that they will be strong partners for peace. But if you attack them, then they're going to go into the fear mode, which we Jews are full of fear. And a Jew with his back against the wall is not going to give an inch. And I want my people to give more than an inch.
We leave it to you to choose.
Okay, I have two questions, but I guess maybe I'll ask the rabbi afterwards. It's a halakha question, and not everyone here gets to hear it. Okay. So my question is, for the past year or so, I've been somewhat involved with leftist, at least pro-Israel groups, and when I try to get my friends who are pro-Israel, but more to the right, to please come along and hear it. Says, I don't think you understand. I'm really right-wing. I do not want to have to listen to them. And I don't know. My point is, how can I get my friends to come along? And then on the flip side of that is, I have some Palestinian friends, and there was going to be a conference in Beit Jala tomorrow.
Yes.
And one of my friends was going to protest it. And I had a very intense conversation, like...
A Palestinian?
Yes, a Palestinian, a refugee. She was going to protest it, and I saw on Facebook that she is attending the protest. And I said, I want to know, like, how can I get, what can I say to my Palestinian friends to, like, I don't know, I can't tell them what to do. They're entitled to what their opinion, they're entitled to do what is right, but how can I, influence them to be pro-normalization, even though that's a dirty word to them. I know it, and I know it's a betrayal of they see it as a betrayal of their values, but how can I warm them up to normalization, or can I not do that?
Well, I have to tell you that, you know, when the ship goes to the water, it can reach nowhere. Why? It can reach nowhere unless the captain knows where he's going. What I'm trying to say, that girl, a refugee girl, when she say I'm against this, so what is she's pro? Does she pro anything? Is she pro anything?
She's
Pro
for
what?
BTS. She's for this movement. I forgot what it's called.
Okay, what?
Solidarity. I don't know what. I said, like, so what solution do you want? What stage?
Yeah,
What
did
would it
you
be
ask
called?
her? Yeah, what she said?
She said, what would it be called? And I said, Israel team, like Muhammad Gaddafi said.
That's what's her worries about the name?
Yeah,
Listen,
that's a
listen.
joke.
Sometimes, I believe, don't focus there. You know what you just said? You just said they succeed to confuse you. You don't know how to deal with it. The right wing, the left wing, the boycott, the BDS. So you are nowhere. And this is not, what's your goal? What do you want?
I want normalization.
That's your goal. Work for it. Why you should be giving answer to everyone? You cannot answer everyone. I cannot answer everyone. Just God answer, and even God we don't listen. So this is one. I know it's very like large answer because I'm coming from there and I know that people come up with statements with no alternatives because they cannot face the truth. I could be a hero in my community without standing with this man. But I don't want this credibility because my nation is dying because of that. The other thing, I think it's not about them, it's about you. You have to be strategized if you want to reach them. You want to reach them? If you want to reach them, talk about them, not talk against them. I mean, you know, I'll tell you a story. I didn't tell this since months. Once I was coming to a checkpoint with my friend, he's a doctor. He had this fancy Mercedes car. And when we came to the checkpoint, it was raining. In winter, it's a very cold area. It was raining, cold. And after around 2 hours of standing in the car, we came to the soldier who was checking the cars. And he came under this rain, under this, cold, and I opened the window and I was expecting that he would ask for my ID. Then he came and he started smiling. He's smiling to me and telling me, how is the checkpoint? And I knew who I am dealing with. He's proud of causing me that suffering, He wanted to hear my screaming. Makes him feel good. Then I said to him, it's terrible. I mean, the checkpoint is terrible. And he smiled more, he became so happy. And he said, tell me why. Then I look at him and I smile. And I told him, because you are suffering. Then he said, no, you are suffering. And I said, no, I'm in this warm, fancy car. You are under and you're gonna spend the rest of your day here. But I'm the one who will leave. And I will stay here, and you will stay here. Look at yourself. You are stuck with this cold, but you are stuck with this anger inside you. I feel sorry about you. He couldn't believe. He asked me who I am. I told him who I am, shortly. And he told me that he grew up in Kiryat Arba. But this is the first time that a Palestinian said that he's suffering. And I said, well, good morning. You came proud of what are you causing me? What are you expecting from me? To become Gandhi? For sure, as a consequence of your act, I will carry a weapon and shoot. And this is that your cause. The checkpoint is for security. But you now turning me to terrorist. So what are you doing to yourself? You will never forget me anyways.
the Palestinian secret weapon. And believe it or not, I believe the Palestinian secret weapon is normalization. If the Palestinians let me and all my family and all my friends and all my neighbors and all my students and everyone who lives where I live, if they would let us see them, then we would melt. I mean is that we would not retreat from our truth, but we'd hear their truth, and I think we'd be able to begin a journey together. But if you don't let me meet you, then we're going to remain enemies. And if we're remaining enemies, you'll never get what you want, and I'll never get what I want. Now, please understand, I understand why Palestinians don't think that they should normalize the relation with Israelis. They say that any contact with the occupier is giving legitimacy to the occupier. They feel that their dignity is being robbed from them. At least they can do is stand up and say, I'm not talking to you, you're illegitimate. I get that. I really do. But that's, as Ali says, that's being right. But it's not doing what you have to do to be successful. I want the Palestinians to be successful. I want them to have their rights. Help me recognize your rights. I'll let more to say after you later. This man stood up and was like, then you, yeah.
5 more minutes officially, and
Then we'll stay as long as you want.
then you can engage them private.
Thank you both for your messages tonight. I'd like to offer up a somewhat different alternative. As you were speaking, I was thinking about Martin Luther King Jr. and the Selma March. So the work that you're doing with nonviolent resistance, genuine dialogue, all of that is awesome. At the same time, though, you know, when you look at the work of Martin Luther King on the march, Martin Luther King Jr. certainly didn't have the total package. He didn't have the total answer to the oppression of black people. But in Selma, there was a tangible political ask, you know, in that case, for voting rights. So I would very much hope, as you go forward, that you continue to do the great stuff that you're doing, but find some tangible political actions that you could agree on. For example, stopping the spread of settlements, not forcing Palestinians out of East Jerusalem.
Should I respond? That's related to what this gentleman here said, and I think that you have a very good point. When in our movement in SHORASHIM, when we think of what we could do to tangibly improve the Palestinian situation on the ground without alienating the base that we're trying to collect around us, we think in terms not of political rights but of human rights. Again, political rights, which I believe in for Palestinians. If that goes on our website, we burned our bridges. But human rights, perhaps we can, and we're thinking about this, work for human rights while we're where we are at this point.
I'm not expecting from roots everything, because I'm clear with myself. Part of my action will be resisting the occupier. They cannot do it. But others, Jewish, Israelis can do it. They cannot do it. But for me, you know what does it mean to me when Hanan brought me to speak with 40 people of his neighbors? It's a dream. I mean, this is not nice. I mean, this is not soft. This is not comfortable. This is hard to me. And he has to fight even the security. How can you bring a terrorist to our community? This is what they told him. And he received emails against him. And you know, bringing me there, these are the people that I'm willing to talk with. Because with the lefties, I have no problem. Really, I mean, you make peace between enemies, not between friends. And the lefties are there. They are nice. They are very nice. So they're not changing my life. Honestly. So going to there worth creating roots for me. On the other part of it, yes, as you said exactly, non-violence has to have direct actions. But direct actions without engagement without dialogue, without empathy, without humanity, without human rights, will not succeed. We are not, this model, the conflict itself is so complex. It's not a black and white, it's not South Africa, it's not even Northern Ireland, it's different in each level of it. So the non-violence has to be different. That's why we are stuck. The peace movement is stuck. Because the strategy has to be created by including and looking to all of these values of the conflict itself. Otherwise, we will keep running in our place. That's what I feel today.
They give the microphone to someone else. Sorry.
Yes, sorry, it caused confusion very bit. Pretty much a foreigner. I was born in Honduras. I was a merchant marine, and I traveled the world. The point that you both make is very important, but see, what I'm trying to make is that I see Jews and Palestinians live together in harmony throughout the world, and I wonder if the movement that you're starting, and now I guess we're all starting, traveling through the world and meeting and finding out more, Latin America, South America, the Caribbean, where people are living in harmony for years. I have never seen, heard anything with Jews and Palestinians. I wonder if that might be a good point to bring in and invite those people to the table and see what they could, because this is great what you're doing. But why not limit it why limit it only to the U.S. when there's a great number of people in the rest of the world? I am also a victim of part of the U.S. policy. My country is also a victim. We all read the news. And there might be some kind of solution between us. Just a 2 cents, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're asking why can't we learn from the rest of the world? Or why can't we support
join them, not learn, but maybe join and invite them. The Jews and the Palestinians who are living in Latin America, for instance, that have been there for many years, successful, running great businesses, and have never had a conflict. I wonder if that might be a part. I may be confused, I might not be.
You mean engaging Jewish and Muslims overseas?
Exactly.
This is what we are doing. That's why we are here. We speak mostly to Jewish people, to many synagogues, or even congressmen, Jewish congressmen. We speak to Muslim congressmen. I spoke with these people. And also, we try to tell them always, if you belong to one of these two campaigns, it won't help. Try to create a new campaign. I said it 4 days ago. I want to see you together, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, walking, marching to the Congress. Because the minute that they will do this policy has to be embarrassed in a way. Don't get me there, I don't want to go there.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
My question to is you, not to him.
Please.
My question goes this.
Yeah.
And I look at you. You're a nice man. You have a good heart.
Thank you.
You have all the idea of peace. I come from a village in India. In 1946, 47, I was a little child, and there was a man called Gandhi. You know him, right? Changed a lot of things. The villages near me, there were Muslims. Partition happened. All went there. There are no human rights in Pakistan. Anybody can go anywhere. My fear is with you. You can reach us Jews, and we can understand. Peace agreement will happen. You may not like, he may not like. It will be signed by whether Abbas or somebody in Israel. It will be signed. You have to fight too, but how are you going to do it? You have to fight one battle against your own leaders, against your own people, because you want to preserve the rights, which is human rights. Coming to Jews, coming to the Western world, which is already accepting that certain people can suffer, can be denied, can be done anything. That's how are you going to address that issue? Because you can talk to all the Jews. Because even now, in the United States, about over 60% of the Jews support Obama, correct? He's for the peace, he's for the everything, right? Your problem would be, yes, you can talk peace. How are you going to overcome your own leaders? Because they will be there, and you are not going to remove them in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And my question is to you, I don't think.
Well, I'm not sure if Obama is for peace.
Whether he is or he talks.
No. I mean, the Western world is causing us more. By the way, you have, with all of my respect, read politics again, because this is what I see. And I know how much was delivered from the Western world to the third world, weapon, blood, political plans. This is one. The other thing, you are right. Everyone has to deal with his own community. Hanan has to deal with that sucker who stand up while I was talking to these kids and told my partner, why you brought us this baboon, this monkey? I am a monkey. After all what I have been through, waking up at 3 in the morning to cross to Rosh Pina in the north, and to talk to these kids before they go to the army, and after losing my brother and my land and my right, and get humiliated in that checkpoint which I have to pass to go to speak about reconciliation, in his eyes I am a monkey. I think both sides has to deal with their own community, this is one, and stop being fully right, and I said that. Maybe we have to look at the mirror and say again, maybe we are not totally right. I said that. Second, I know that I have no enemies. I have no judgment. The minute that I will judge and punish and blame, I have no power. My power comes from love. But this is not the naive love. This is the most political love that you can imagine. This is what Hanan said. The worst enemy is non-violent. It's an enemy. Third, I understand that we are sometimes not good representative for you about our cause. I always say Palestinian has the most just cause, but they are a very bad lawyer. And there is injustice in the court. Here, there is injustice. So how to deal with all of that? It's just together, in my opinion.
Just to conclude, a month into the first Intifada, that's January 1988, the religious peace movement in Israel that I was directing had a very contentious meeting in a big hall in West Jerusalem, hosting Mubarak Awwad, who had come from the United States, a Palestinian Christian disciple of Gandhi and Eugene Shaw, an apostle of nonviolence. We supported him. There were supporters of the late Mayor Hanan outside shouting all kinds of defamations against us. We had bodyguards to secure Mubarak and his Palestinian friends. Yitzhak Shamir was prime minister and kicked Mubarak out of the country because he was so threatening. He was more threatening than stone throwers or suicide bombers. If I and your colleagues succeed this round, we will all be liberated. And you too, if you succeed in doing the heroic job of getting Jewish settlers on board the peace train from whatever station it leaves. Then, as disciples of our dear, beloved, departed friend, Natan Cronin, blessed memory, who went to Gaza and spoke with Yasser Arafat and Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and Abdulaziz al-Rantisi and all the Hamas leaders, because he understood that without the whole land of Palestine disciples and the whole land of Israel disciples, especially those who were religiously, fervently motivated, at the peace table, it's just secular, nationalist, utilitarian, well-meaning leaders, it won't work, because it's a holy land, and large minorities, at least 20% Palestinian Muslims and 20% Israeli Jews think compromise is sacrilege. So they will try to sabotage an agreement the way Yigal Amir shot Yitzhak Rabin in the back. The situation is not conducive for any peace plan to take hold. And these heroic visionaries understand it, because the ground is not seeded for any cultivation to bear fruit yet. That's why they call themselves roots, because you have to start at the roots to move up to the top of the tree. Thank you for sharing your courageous commitment with us, and I hope we can match it. We have less at stake than you. We have the same, we will suffer the consequences of peace or war in that land. As you see, the toxicity is exported, and we have to be part of the detox campaign. Okay, even if your children are the ones on the front line, we have to pitch in. Have a good night.